Yeah, welcome to the follow-up after show. Julie Keil, the Saginaw Valley State University political science professor, joins again to talk about something we did not get in the big show. These special elections that have been going on. The most recent one was Democrat Connor Lamb won the congressional seat from the Republican in Pennsylvania in a position that was vacated. Lamb's a Democrat, obviously. That's the same district that President Trump won by 20 points in the regular election when he became president. So the question becomes, is this sort of, how significant is this in terms of the future of the midterm elections of the Democrats? Is it going to be a groundswell given what's happened with the Trump administration?
It definitely is an interesting election. The two elections prior to that one, they didn't even run a candidate. The Democratic Party didn't. So that's a sign of how much they thought of this being totally a red seat, because they wouldn't even run a candidate against him. So actually even running a candidate was a bit of a switch. And yes, as you pointed out, he had been, President Trump had taken that area by 20 points. The other maybe kind of controversial thing here, though, is the fact that the seat's going to be up for election again in November. So whoever won the election was only going to have 8 months in office because it's a special election. They have to run again. And so that may have in some way influenced who the Republicans actually put up as a candidate as a result. So it's a little bit hard to tell. However, if you look at that plus the Alabama race, which happened earlier, where they flipped the seat and actually put somebody in the Senate from the Democratic Party, then it starts to look a little bit more like a tide maybe moving. And I think this is really what's triggering President Trump to try some of his more directional issues so that he can get people distracted from what's actually happening in the elections and look instead at the various different things he would prefer to talk about, because he's not winning the elections right now. So I think that is kind of maybe from the Democratic point of view a good sign. It's certainly something it's concerning to the Republican Party. There's no doubt about that.
Think about Lamb. He's more of a moderate. Some say he's closer to the Republican side. He supports the terrorists and some other things. So he may not totally align with the Democratic Party on all things. He does support the president on some things. So
I don't think anybody's going to win these special elections or even some of the other very close races that's going to be a really extreme right-wing or extreme left-wing candidate. And so the Tea Party has been rising in power over the last 10, 12 years. Their power is starting to moderate a little bit. And I think it's going to be more difficult for them to pick up a Democratic seat than for a more moderate Democrat to pick up a Republican seat. So I think it's a good trend from the Democratic Party's point of view. But are you really getting a Democrat, or are you getting a Dino, a Democrat in name only, which Lamb does somewhat appear to be?
Yeah, the other thing about these special elections, they tend not to draw as many people out to the polls. I think the Democrats probably did their best to get more people out. I don't know what that says for the midterms, because you're going to, the polls, a lot more people are going to come to the midterms. So.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the midterms. I think there's going to be a good turnout for the midterm elections this year, though. Among other things, a number of the younger students are becoming kind of radicalized and are interested in voting, and that's something I haven't seen before. I've been teaching for 11 years in college, and I teach political science students, so most of them vote. If you ask, of course, they all voted. But even the people that are not necessarily political science students are starting to become interested in voting and more motivated. That's going to be a groundswell that may have an effect on the midterm elections as well.
Overall, I think I read something today, there were actually 100 special elections here in the last, 6 to 8 months at all levels, and a fair share of them went to the Democrats, I think.
Yes.
So, again, that's whether or not we're going to see the blue wave again in the midterms, we'll see, right?
Well, it's also significant that they haven't necessarily won the seat, but they have been closing the gap between the Republican and the Democratic candidate. So instead of losing by 25 points, they're losing by 5 points. And that was true in Missouri and Kansas, I think, in particular, which are absolutely red states, almost as red as Alabama is. But you're starting to see people contesting elections and contesting them successfully. The other significant thing about the Lamb case is that the Republicans put an awful lot of money into it. President Trump went and campaigned for him. I think Ivanka went and campaigned for him. I believe Pence went and campaigned for him. And that didn't help. It may have actually hurt his chances of winning because he really wasn't able to drive a stake in the idea that Connor Lamb himself was going to be that bad of a candidate. So he dwelled on things that did not help his party rather than things that did help the party.
Here's a question, and then I was going to ask you this, but I'll throw it out, being that you're poli-sci background, because so many people are a little bit tired of the Democrat and the Republican and the gridlock. Do you see more people coming out saying, I'm going to run it as independent because I don't identify with either party?
Well, I actually know quite a bit about this topic because this
figured
is
you
something
did.
that I teach. And the reality of it is if you're in a first-past-the-post electoral system, which the United States is, whoever gets the most votes, regardless of whether they win 50% of the vote or 40 or 20%, those first-past-the-post countries are doomed to always have elections with two parties, a two-party system. It's called Duverger's law.
Okay.
And really the only way to be able to change that two-party system would be to change the electoral system. Either eliminate the electoral college or eliminate, just in general, a first-past-the-post electoral system and do something more similar to what Canada or Europe does. And I can't imagine that ever happening in the United States. So I think we're pretty much doomed to have two parties.
Yeah, with the Electoral College and all that went on with that, I don't think you're going to see that change anytime soon.
No,
Some
I
would
don't
like
think
to
so
see
either.
that change. I don't think that's happening, though.
Yeah, I think that's accurate, yeah.
Well, that's good perspective on that. I'm glad I asked you.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming in tonight. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate
Okay.
it. Yeah.